Hey everyone, welcome back. And this is going to be a very special video because for those of you who have been on my channel for a few years now, then you know that like 2 or 3 years ago I did a series of videos which was basically a fan fiction writing tutorial. Okay, because I myself am a fan fiction writer and reader. Okay. And I decided to reboot that because I looked back at it, I wasn't too happy with the way it turned out, looking back. So I decided to redo that, okay? So, yeah, so I myself am a fanfiction writer and reader. I've written quite a few stories on my channel within the past 4 years. I've been on fanfiction.net, which the link to my fanfiction.net account is in the description of all my videos. Okay, so you can always go there to find it if you're interested in what I've written over the years. I've written stories for Sly Cooper, for Naruto, and as of recently I started a Fate Stay Night story, and unfortunately I haven't had much time to write in recent years, but I do plan on writing a lot more as I continue. Okay. And there's always times when I see new writers coming to the site. Okay. In fact, just today I've read quite a few and did some reviews of quite a few. Okay. And unfortunately, and this is an unfortunate fact, that there are a lot of attempts at poorly written fan fictions out there. I don't think anyone can really deny that. As much as I love fan fiction, I love reading fan fiction, I love writing fan fiction, there's no denying that there's a lot of attempts at poorly written fan fiction out there. And I'm not one to say that I think my fan fiction is great, because I don't. I have a very low opinion of everything I do, though, so you might think differently, who knows. But I've gotten good reviews and I've gotten bad reviews. I think every fanfiction writer who's been one for a while has gotten that. It's like YouTube, you know, you get good comments, you get bad comments, whatever. But I decided to make this redo this tutorial because I really, if I'm able to, I really want to help people improve their writing. Okay, and hopefully there's some people who take this tutorial to heart and actually improve their writing with it. Now that being said, everything I'm saying here are ultimately guidelines. I mean, you can choose to plug your ears and ignore this all you want. But if you're one of the people who I'm talking about, like, I don't want to toot my own horn here, I really don't, but you better listen to what I'm going to be saying. Because you can plug your ears and ignore this all you want, but that's not going to help your writing improve. I'm sorry, but it's not. So, I'm just saying, like, you don't have to listen to anything I'm saying, but I highly recommend that you do. Okay, so, let's begin. So, first off, I want to just kind of lay out a... Damn it. Dropped my pen. I've still have my pen in my hand here because I've just got done with writing a little bit and I decided to make the tutorial. So, I want to start out with a definition of what fan fiction is, alright? Dictionary.com describes fan fiction as such, and I quote, a fictional account written by a fan of a show, movie, book, or video game to express themes or ideas that cannot or will not be expressed via the original medium. Which is of course true, but I'd like to take that definition a little bit further and say that fan fiction is the author having a chance to express their own ideas via an outlet. Say, Fate Stay Night. Okay. So that, in general, that's what fan fiction is. Alright? Now there's also different types of fan fiction that I wanted to discuss here too before we get really into the meat of this video. There's really 4 main types of fan fiction that I want to talk about. The first types, which seem to be the most common, for obvious reasons I'll get into, are one-shots. Alright, one-shots are generally just like one chapter, but can later on be broken into 2 or 3 smaller chapters, okay? And one-shots are generally written, or at least I generally write one-shots, in order to explain something brief that was not explained in the original source that I think should be explained. For example, or it can be used for inner monologue things. For example, I have a Sly Cooper fanfiction on fanfiction.net called The Hole, which is Sly Cooper's inner monologue when he was trapped inside of the hole in Sly 2 Band of Thieves, the prison known as the Hole, and or the prison-like thing known as the Hole, and what exactly was going through his mind. Okay, so that's a common way that one-shots can be used, and they are obviously the most common type. And I definitely recommend starting out, if you're just beginning, I definitely recommend starting out with one-shots and moving on to bigger and better stories as you progress and get better at writing. Okay. The next type is poems, which are also very common, and another one that I tend to see are really common as well. Now, poems are short pieces, not necessarily always rhyming, but they can. But they do have to have some sort of a coherent rhythm in them. That doesn't necessarily mean that they rhyme per se, but they have to. The poems are supposed to have some sort of a coherent rhythm within them. That's what separates poems from one-shots. Okay. Other than that, they're basically the same thing, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, and again, the poems are another great way to start if you're starting. I personally am not a fan of poems myself, and I have never written one. When I started out with one-shots. Okay, but maybe you are a fan of poems. Who knows? But personally, I'm just not. But anyways, though. However, if you're looking for a more serious approach, not serious about it, but I mean like a more a more mainstream approach, then full stories are the way to go. Okay, they're just as the name implied. They're completed, like, longer stories that can go for any length of chapters as the author sees fit, so long as the story is told correctly. All right, here, sky's the limit. You can create a plot line, invent scenarios, make up characters if you want, or use characters that are already in the original source material. Okay, and just go at it until you reach the end. You can, and one thing you also have to remember is you are the master of your own work. You can pretty much do whatever you want in your story, so long as it fits within the original, like, story. Like, you're not deviating too much from the actual story. Now, there are certain exceptions where if you want to do an alternate universe thing, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, if you want to do an alternate universe thing, I'd be sure to put like an author's note at the top of the story to let people know. So if people want to read an alternate universe thing, they can continue reading, but if they don't, they can just turn away if they don't like that sort of thing. Okay. There's also one other type of story, which I don't see as often. I'll explain why, but can also be pretty good, which are songfics. Now, I am no good with writing songfics, so I'm not going to try to help you write a songfic. I am a beta reader on fanfiction.net, by the way, in case you want me to beta read your stories, but I am no good with writing songfics. No. But songfics are, just as the name implied, they're basically usually one-shots, although I suppose they could be poems or usually one-shots or poems, actually, but I suppose they could be full stories. I'm not too sure how that would work. I think it might get annoying every now and then, or eventually, but maybe that's just me. But they're usually one-shots or poems, which, as the name implies, they incorporate lyrics of a song into the actual story itself to help try to convey what the piece is saying. Okay. And in my personal opinion, I think that songfics are some of the best out there. As few of them as there are. I honestly think that songfics are some of the best stories out there. Okay. Unfortunately, fanfiction.net does not approve of them, for obvious legal reasons. And because of this, they are mostly considered taboo and banned on the site, for all intents and purposes. However, despite this, people seem to write them anyways. I mean, there's songfics on every other subject, and maybe I just haven't been observant enough, but at the moment, it really doesn't seem to be much of a problem. I'm guessing that maybe if you like credit the artist of the song in the file, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. Hopefully. Yeah, but I haven't really noticed any big issues with it, okay? But songfics, again, are not really my thing, but maybe they will be yours. I certainly do like to read songfics. I'm just really shitty when it comes to writing songfics, alright? And thus, I won't beta read songfic. I mean, I'll certainly read them, but I won't beta them because I don't have the skill required to beta read a fucking songfic, okay? So anyways, before I get into the next portion of this video, I do want to give a really big tip to beginners. And I mentioned this early on in the video, but now I'm going to go more in depth with it. You need to start small, okay? When I started, the first story I ever had up on fanfiction.net was a Sly Cooper fanfiction called Egyptian Terror. And although I look back on it, and it wasn't necessarily terrible, I don't think, but I think if I waited to do that one, it would have been a lot better if I did it now. Okay. It was basically taking Sly Cooper's ancestor, Sly Uncommon II, and making an entire story revolving around him and his gang. And I honestly think it could have been a lot better. It wasn't terrible, but I still think it could have been a lot better. Okay. It was after I finished that story that I decided to write some one-shots. Okay. Including two Sly Cooper stories which are still ongoing, which are basically a collection of one-shots called Life of Thieves and Pre-Sly Cooper Boss Fights. Okay. Which I need to update both of them, by the way. I haven't updated them in like 2 or 3 years. I know, I'm really bad with that. Luckily, though, they're not continuing stories. They're just a collection of one-shots. But anyways, though. So, hold on a second. So that's the best advice I can give to beginners, is just to start small and work your way up. Okay. So now that I've got that out of the way, it took over 12 minutes. I want to get to plots. Okay, I want to get to the meat and potatoes of every fanfiction. The plot and characters. Starting off, of course, with the plots. Now, there's lots of ways to write a plot. And the best way to do it is to get some sort of inspiration. But inspiration, as I know from personal experience, is really difficult to come by. Okay? It's not easy to get inspiration for a story. And if you try to force inspiration, then the plot's just going to come out thick and flavorless and will appeal to no one. Alright, inspiration has to come to you. And again, it's not easy. It could be from an anime you watched, a manga you read, a book you read, a movie you watched, a song you listened to. I've done that quite a bit. Not songfics, obviously, but I've gotten inspiration from songs that I've listened to, though, before. Alright, or just some a TV show you watched, or just some random daydream you had in the middle of class when you didn't feel like taking notes. Okay, inspiration can literally come from anywhere. Okay, despite that huge range, I still find it to this day difficult to get inspiration, and having inspiration. Not forcing inspiration and having it come to me was actually a lesson that I recently had to relearn myself. Okay. Now, though I don't necessarily condone taking ideas from other things or other people, as this can usually translate to laziness on the author's part, this is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, so long as you work it in a way to where it is still yours and not the other person's, it can still be used. Okay. Oh, and don't copy me. Please. At least not without asking first. I'll usually let people use bits and pieces of what I create as long as they ask first. I'm usually pretty generous with that. So, just to let you know, for future reference, okay? If you don't ask first, that's when I get pissed. Alright? So anyway, I will report you to fanfiction.net if you don't ask first. So anyways, that being said, and moving away from inspiration, I find that a lot of people don't know how to construct a plot properly. And this is a problem that even I still have now, because plots are not easy to construct. All right, there's a few things before you even sit down and start writing the plot. There's a few things that you have to sort of like figure out first. All right, first off, you have to figure out exactly what your plot is going to be. Okay, now story and plot are two completely separate things. And I might make a video about that in the future, because I would like to make a series of like story writing videos and whatnot. But story and plot are not the same things. To just give a brief description of each, the plot is everything that's going to happen in the best way I can describe it is that the plot is everything that's going to happen in detail, while the story is just the outline, the framework of the plot, the base, if you will. The story is just the base, the plot's the completed thing, the completed product, okay? That's the easiest and simplest way that I can describe it. I'm sorry if that was a bit confusing for you. So, you know, you obviously need a middle, beginning, and end, but you also need it to stay consistent throughout the entirety of the story, obviously, so it actually makes sense, you know. Looking back on some of my old stories, I don't think I did too good of a job with that, mostly. Or maybe I did. I don't know. Right now, I don't even look back at any of my old stories. Hey, kind of weird, huh? Almost makes me want to go look at them again. Almost. But anyways, though. So, moving away from that, there's also a huge issue that I find in fanfiction writers. And that is describe everything. Description is essential. Whether you're introducing a new setting, new characters, reintroducing characters but they look different, an item, you know, a power or ability, whatever, a vehicle, whatever you're doing, you have to describe it, or else nobody's going to care what happens. Okay, seriously, like this is a problem everyone has, even me at times. All right, I know we know what certain characters look like if we're writing a fan fiction about them, but by describing them, you bring them to life. Okay, take the extra mile and say Goku has spiky hair instead of saying it's just Goku. You know, if you're writing a DBZ fan fiction. Okay, for example, description is one of the most important things about writing a story, and I find even for me, it's one of the most difficult things to do, because you have to find a balance between too much description or not enough, because there is such thing as too much. Okay, you don't want to describe absolutely everything, and there's also such thing as describing way too much about characters when it starts, but I'll get to that in just a sec, because I do want to move into characters right now. Characters, obviously, are the icing on the cake, okay? Without the characters, the story cannot be. That's why you need to have good fucking characters, okay? If your characters are shit, then your story obviously is going to suffer because of it. Alright, because if people don't like your characters, they're not going to care what your characters do, and they'll probably stop reading your story to begin with. So, you have to have good characters. Enough said. But something I find with characters is, as I said before, I find it way too often that people tend to lay out detail by detail everything about their characters in just like 1 or 2 chapters, or maybe a few more, if they're like major characters. All right, we as the readers are not meant to know everything about a character right from the get-go, unless they're a 1 chapter or 1 scene character only. Okay. From their initial appearance, you should only give a description of what they look like, including hair color, eye color, height, build, what they're wearing, any skin color, and any other like little odds and ends about what they might be wearing or holding or anything like that. You know, their initial personality, maybe like what their voice sounds like, stuff like that. You know, what they're doing, stuff like that. As the story progresses, you can move into likes, dislikes, and all that good stuff, and anything else that you see fit. If they're like a major character, like a major villain or antagonist, Then later on in the story, you can move into what their like overarching role is in the storyline. Okay. The characters are meant to progress at the exact same pace as the story. So let them. Don't tell us everything about a character right away. It gets very boring after a while because then there's no surprise. There's no mystery at all. Okay. So, and in terms of characters, there's 3 types of characters I want to talk about. Alright. The first type we have are the main characters. These are the characters in which appear in almost every single scene. They're the ones that the story's about, and the ones that the story that all the events, or at least most of the events, are going to be centered around. Okay. The second set of characters are called side characters. These are characters in which, although they are important to an extent, alright, they're mainly just background characters, and they're there to help move the plot along to an extent, but also to help develop the main characters. Okay. And to help the main characters themselves progress. Then we have the minor characters. Now these characters are really like background characters through and through. They tend to only be in like a few chapters or a few scenes, and they really don't have much relevance on the plot at all, except for maybe like bringing up a conflict. They might start a conflict, but that's usually like the most relevance on the plot that they'll ever tend to have. Okay? So, in my personal writings, I tend to have a lot less minor characters. Okay? In fact, I try not to bring up too many characters if I can help it. In my fanfiction, I recently started a Fate Eternity, which is only 1 chapter on so far, by the way. That's a fanfiction of Fate's Day Night telling the events of the First Holy Grail War. Okay, now naturally I'm going to have a lot of characters because there's going to be 7 masters and 7 servants. That's already 14 characters right there. Plus there's also going to be other characters as well to help move, such as characters from the church, characters from Ryudu Temple, and other characters as well. So naturally in that story there's going to be a lot of characters. So for me that's actually a big step. It's a big step in creating more complex plots with a lot more characters. Something I haven't really done before. Okay, so I'm really making a big step there with that. Now, something else I want to talk about here about characters is how to properly construct a character. Damn it, I really hope my camera doesn't run out of time here. How to properly construct a character. Something that I see people fucking up with all the time, and even I tend to have trouble with a lot. See, there's a lot of stuff I'm talking about here that even I still didn't have trouble with a lot. Alright. How to construct a character. There's a few things you have to keep in mind. First off, you have to give them a personality. I'd recommend giving all your major characters at least 3 sides to their personality. Side characters can have 3 or more sides, but generally speaking, if they're used properly, they can work with just 2 sides, but having just 1 side with them isn't very interesting. And in terms of minor characters, they can have just 1 side without it being too boring, I think. Okay. And now, if you're looking for like an adult characters and you want to give them a specific career that is in real life, unless it's set in a fantastical world where things can be different, I recommend that you do a little bit of research on their profession. Yeah, it can seem kind of boring and really kind of pointless when you think about it, but when you do think about it, as long as you have an idea of what they do and how it is they do it, it can make your characters seem more real. This inclusion core, of course, includes police officers, firemen, EMPs, soldiers. You know, if you're having a war. You know, and anything else like that. You know, cooks, chefs, stuff like that. Okay. Just find out exactly what is they do and how it is they do it in detail. If you want to take some liberties then I'd say only do that if it's not set in the real world. Okay. Now, character interactions is another thing. I love character interactions, but a lot of people fuck this up, and this is also something that I have trouble with. At times. I'm not going to talk about dialogue too much because that's something you can only learn from experience. But the real thing here that I want to talk about with in terms of character interactions is romantic relationships. Something that I tend to fuck up with the most in my writing is how characters fall in love, which is sad because I really love romances. Okay. Characters do not just up and fall in love, okay? And they do not do it in some of the ways that I have seen in some of these fucking fan fictions. Seriously. So far in my fan fictions, I really haven't had any major romances, but in Fate Eternity, I do plan on having a major romance. And I really hope I do it well. The sort of method here that I came up with that I think will work just fine. Now, since this isn't set in the real world, this is based on an anime, this fanfiction based on an anime, so it might have to be a bit more fantastical, I guess you could say, to keep true to anime style of romance, but, or anime's generic style of romance, that is. This is the general formula that tends to, I think will probably work best. All right, boy meets a girl. Boy and or girl feels attracted towards one another. Boy or girl asks boy or girl out on a date. They have a good time. Or maybe they don't have a good time. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to have that in there every now and then. But they have a good time. Right? They go out on another date. They decide to start seriously dating. Then, a little ways down the road, after a few more dates and a few fights here or there, because all couples fight, they can officially say that they love each other. Alright. That, to me, I think is the perfect formula for a romance. Now, fanfiction writers, this is very important, and writers in general, this is very important. Romance is not something that is supposed to be rushed, or, well, yeah, basically just rushed. It is something that takes time, and anyone else who has ever been in love can tell you that, but I'm not even going to get into that. Let's just move on. So I think that's pretty much it for so one more thing I want to talk about in terms of the plot, which I mentioned earlier, is some people would tell you to avoid cliches. I say don't listen to that, alright? I have always hated it when people tell you to avoid cliches. Why? If a cliche is well written, it can be effective. It just has to be utilized properly. That is what's important. That's all it's important, how it's used, okay? And who knows, maybe down the road when you become a better writer, you can avoid cliches better. Who knows, okay? So anyways, I think there's almost 30 minutes here. I think that's about it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I just wanted to give a few tips on how to write better fan fiction, alright? Because as of January, as of January 9th, okay, as of January 9th, I will have been an avid user of fanfiction.net for 4 years, okay? And I've seen lots of writers come and go over that time, and I've written a lot of stories over that time, and I'm hoping to write a lot more stories as the years pass, okay? Alright, I don't plan on leaving fanfiction.net anytime soon. In fact, I could see myself being 40 and still writing stuff in fanfiction.net, even when I finally have my books published and I have a steady career. I could still see myself writing on fanfiction.net every now and then, because I love the site and I love to write fanfiction, alright? And I think the last piece of advice I can really give you is to don't be discouraged. It's really easy to just give up and say quits when nobody's noticing your stories or all you're receiving is hate. But don't get discouraged, alright? As Julius Cameron once said, stories want to be written. If we have the impulse to create, then what we create has the impulse to be born. And that's really, I think, the best piece of advice I can give to any writers, beginners or veterans. So that finally reached the 30-minute mark here, and that concludes my fanfiction writing tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. Please tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. And yeah, I'm hoping to start a series where I do tutorials, or where I basically do videos like this where I'm talking about different aspects of writing and whatnot. So anyways, overall, hope you enjoyed this video, guys. See you after, guys. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.